the market today is like people want to buy tools for agents because an agent is defined as a model with a set of tools and people give it a web search tool. I think what I'm excited about for next year is I think more and more of the market will move towards sub-agents. So people will call us as a search agent to go do with more autonomy, more work than a single tool call, which is very constraining. And the next thing I'm excited about, which is another product we shipped last week, is this thing of the web transitioning from pull as it is today to push. So you should be able to say when X happens in the world, call me so that me or my agent can take an action.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Founders in Arms podcast with me, Imad Akun, co-founder and CEO of Mercury.
And I'm Raj Suri, co-founder of Lima and Tribe. And today we have with us Parag Agrawal, co-founder CEO of Parallel. Welcome, Parag.
Thanks for having me.
Parag was previously the CEO of Twitter just before they sold in their final kind of going private acquisition. So lots of fame. But you also just announced a big funding round for Parallel, right?
We did a week ago.
Tell us about Parallel.
We started Parallel 2 years ago. The notion that I got obsessed with was that everything we've built on the web over several decades is going to become irrelevant when the primary consumer of the web goes from being a human to an agent. And so 2 years ago, I got obsessed with this notion of like when we were building consumer products, how were we building it? We're thinking about a user looking at a device, what experience to create for them, what inputs they would provide, what to show them. And if there's going to be an agent between us and a human, how you architect every piece of technology on the web changes completely. And so we got obsessed with that idea. And the second thing that really pushed me and the team over the line was like, once you get obsessed with it, the very next obvious leap of faith is that agents are going to use the web several orders of magnitude more than humans ever have. Because we've been limited by our time and attention. Agents are limited by the number of GPUs we can build and deploy for productive purposes or non-productive purposes. So, and that got really, that was really fun to like now imagine that we're building infrastructure which is going to operate at orders of magnitude bigger than web scale as we think of it today.
Can you give us like an example of like someone using Parallel? Because I guess that sounds like a great vision statement. I'm trying to put it in like a practical use case.
So our products are APIs. And if you think about anyone building an agent that needs to access the web, so think of the most popular agent that most people are aware of and familiar with are coding agents. So you have your coding agent. Occasionally, most of the time, your coding agent is looking at your code, your repo, editing files, running commands. Occasionally, it needs to go out to the web to find some information. It needs to read some documents. It needs to get out. It's stuck, or it needs to do competitive analysis because you're doing product work. In those times, these coding agents use our APIs in many cases to search and fetch content from the web. That's a very simple an agent we're familiar with just using our APIs. You see this in anyone building a sales agent, anyone building an agent for finance, someone doing insurance underwriting.
So to go back to the coding agent, let's say you include some library that does something, and the agent will then like search the web to say, for this library, give me the docs, and then you'll give the URL. Do you also then like go scrape the URL and like turn it into structured data for the agent to absorb?
Exactly. So we give the difference between a human and agent, and then you've latched onto it, is that you want to give the agent the exact right content in its context so that it can take the next step successfully. Like that's the entire goal here, right? So you don't make the agent take many steps. If you get the agent to tell you a more precise query than keyword searches, and you produce output tokens which are sufficient and dense in order for the agent to be able to do what it wants to do next. And that's essentially what we optimize for.
No. That's pretty cool. And yeah, I guess when you started, like agents were like pretty new things. And yeah, everyone was probably still in the form of like thinking about ChatGPT and like these kind of chat interfaces. Did you think this is the way it was going to go? Or like, you kind of built this generic tool and you're kind of just seeing these use cases develop?
No, I think we made a bet that this is the way it was going to go. I think you have to make some opinionated bets that to you appear very likely when you go about building something that takes a while to build. So you kind of have to build ahead of the market sometimes. And in this case, we had the conviction that it would. Like I was one of these between Twitter and this company. I was just sitting there hacking on open source. There was this baby AGI thing and AutoGPT. There are a bunch of these open source agent builders, and the models were not good enough. But people were hacking together agents at the time, and you could feel them. And if you believe that models get better, you could feel that these things will become useful. So it was vibes. But it was like empirical, but also it was clear that that had to happen if AIs were going to be any good.
Do you think there's a world where there'll be like thousands and thousands of agents, like there's thousands and thousands of apps, or I guess hundreds of thousands? Or is it that like there's a few SDI agents, a few coding agents, like there's like a few big use cases and there's not that like larger long tail?
So let's separate the definition for a second, right? Agent, how many agent companies will be there, or how many people will sell agentic products is a separate question from how many agents there will be. I do think there will be a lot of specialization in agents, and a lot of work will get done by multi-agent systems. So I think we're going from ChatGPT to an agent with tools to an agent with subagents to more interesting organization primitives of agents together. But if you're getting at like market of agents and what that will look like, right? I have my takes, but I'm actually curious to hear how you've seen it. You're users of agents, I'm guessing.
It's hard to play it out fully. Like the question I always have, and I guess it goes back to like how many companies are there versus how many. Yeah, I think there's a world where like companies like Mercury end up building a ton of agents, but we just use like OpenAI and Anthropic APIs because they just get like advanced enough, and they like you don't have to like specialize that much. But the number of things that will be agentic will be very high. I just don't know if the number of companies that do it will be like in the hundreds of thousands, or whether there'll be like a few companies that like have horizontal tools for it.
Yeah, my take is on the agents which are broad-based for consumers to use. I think there can only be a few, right? It can be like single digits, is my opinion. Like consumer broad-based generalist agent. I think there will be niche agents which are very specialized for people who only like 1% of the population like cares about something and is obsessed about something, and they will have their niche agents. I think the enterprise side is much more wide open in my mind. I think it could shake out in many different ways. I think on one extreme, it could shake out a little bit like the way the cloud and infrastructure story has, which is like a few. On the other world, it could shake out like the SaaS story had, which is like every company is like this bespoke weird thing and ends up having its own stack, and someone sort of built a better-ish solution for them. And you can't be confident which way it will trend.
What are we seeing right now on agents? Like what is the current like most popular use case that you guys are seeing for agents today?
Yeah, no. So I think broadly agents are successful in many areas. We only care about agents where there is real value on the open web that these agents need to unlock, right? So the kinds of agents where we see a lot of value is like any application area of deep research, if you may. So if you're users of like OpenAI or Claude's deep researchy products, those things are really starting to work in many cases. Consumer are the products we're familiar with, but like in the enterprise, like for finance, for insurance underwriting, for like anytime you need to go like competitive intelligence and M&A due diligence, and like I'm gonna build a PE firm, we'll go do a bunch of research and analysis and pull data, even scientific research. We're seeing a bunch of now companies show up trying to build agents for doing scientific research and pulling insights from different disparate papers and corners of the web together. So on the high end of like people really throwing large amounts of compute, we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of scale also in these, let's call them data enrichment use cases. So people will go and take their entire book of business. Let's say you're a bank and you have given out credit to a lot of people in, let's say, small businesses. And you have some ways of knowing signals of credit risk that manifest based on public data. So now people will go build agents to monitor them and make them actionable. People will, when there's sales involved, people do all kinds of creative things. We see a lot of creativity in people finding everything about their customers or prospective customers and target them in interesting ways, or prioritize in different ways, or assign accounts to different AEs. So same thing in recruiting, right? Like, I think you want to find, you allow people to use creativity, right? Like, if I have a hack, which is like, I'm sure, Imad, you have a hack on like what kinds of people and what kind of backgrounds you think have disproportionate merit when you're able to hire them. People will go build an agent to essentially go build the list of people that they should be calling.
Do you think we need a new business model for like content on the web? Because I guess a lot of content right now is free because humans look at ads and, maybe they'll click on it and buy something or do something. Whereas the way you describe it, it's going to be agents kind of browsing the internet and like, never looking at an ad. So yeah, is there a new business model, or it's just like information wants to be free and like there's nothing to do about it?
I think we'll need new business models. I really think we will need new business models. I think the default trend line, right, is that it gets framed as a zero-sum game. So people are like, AIs are stealing my data to create value and keeping all of it, and I get nothing, right? And the natural reaction to that kind of a thing is that you just try to block, right? And it's kind of a value destructive, but also fool's errand of sorts, because like you don't always succeed in blocking, and you in fact succeed in blocking all the good actors and not the bad actors. And so it's this weird dynamic that plays out. So I do think a new business model needs to get created to incentivize people with good quality content.
I mean, that would be like a cool thing for you guys to build. Is that something you're thinking about, like the business model?
The plan is to figure out the future of the web.
Yeah, because like Reddit has these deals with, the big companies, but like for anyone that builds an agent, there's no way they can like go to Reddit and like do a custom deal for every single agent.
Exactly. I think that is where the future is, and we have some ideas, but I don't claim that we have the answers, because this is like inventing a new business model isn't like a casual thing one can do. But I do think there is a need for it, and I think there is a possibility for it. The reason for the possibility is I think AIs are going to create over the web sufficient value that the pie is going to get meaningfully larger, that there will be a way to split it up that makes sense for all parties. So if you don't have a major value creation hypothesis, it's kind of hard to create new business models. When you have a real value creation hypothesis, by bringing people together, bringing participants together, like a publisher and an AI company and a customer, you can actually reasonably slice up the pie to make it worth everyone's while. Now, the question is, can we do this at web scale, programmatically, open market? That's the hard part. On any individual deal basis, you can play out this hypothesis and figure it out. To do it scalably is the crazy hard problem to go solve.
Yeah, it seems like maybe stablecoins could play a role there.
Maybe. I don't think you need it. So I think.
I mean, the benefit of the stablecoin is that you don't need a trusted party, right? Like you could have an agent pay a publisher without like someone in the middle to like take the money from one place and send it to the other place.
Yeah, no, I think that is the benefit. The question is, do people trust a trusted party more, or do people trust a stablecoin piece of code more? And I think it goes both ways. So I think you do need a center of trust of some sorts through some set of principles. It is unclear.
Yeah, I think it depends how much extra stuff you need on top of it. Like if you need dispute resolution, if you need like fraud, like all of those things end up like eventually needing like a payment company in between. What were you going to say, Raj?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think. I mean, there's a lot of precedents for this type of thing to some degree, right? So, I mean, I think we're basically talking about like a payment structure or a business model around tokens, right? Like, so the agents would pay per token or pay, some fee per type of token, right, to a publisher or a creator for their content, and maybe a certain classes of content, and that are gated by paywalls, and I think crawling the web used to be free, but we're talking about now making it not free, right? And like there's going to be, I think there's going to be some types of content that are going to be behind gates. Otherwise, they won't be accessible. I think a lot of people will just turn them off because their data will have more value inside the moat versus outside, right?
No, I think crawling the web is crawling the open parts of the web is free. Crawling the gated off parts of the web is not free. That's where things are today. Now, the question is, will more and more stuff end up in the gated parts of the web or remain in the open parts of the web, right? And we would like more and more stuff to remain in the open parts of the web. And the difference between, I think there is a difference between content that is paid for but accessible for everyone versus content that is only accessible to a few because we have a business arrangement, right? So I think that is a subtle difference, which is a difference between open and closed in my mind, right? So payment is a different dimension, and is it accessible for everyone that has the same market mechanic to pay? Is a different dimension.
Yeah, I think the analog I think about Spotify, right? Like Spotify, there used to be this thing where you used to buy songs and you had to buy it, each consumer had to go buy it from the store. Now it's like every time you listen to a song on Spotify, they get paid, right? So I think that the analogy. I'm sure you've been thinking about this a lot. So
yeah, no, actually that analogy has many layers to it, right? Like there was like piracy and like Napster and like all of those things, and it felt like, okay, why would anyone pay if you could get it for free? There was a layer of like DMCA that was helpful in the journey. There was Spotify that figured out the new business model. Now everyone wasn't happy in this set of movements, and like there were winners and losers and all kinds of things happened. But ultimately, you took this wild west of pirated content and ended up in at least in the West now, pretty much most content being used is licensed when it comes to music. So, and I think it was a journey. I actually don't know the Spotify story as to like how well designed, orchestrated it was and planned it was versus like seeing problems, seeing incentives and going and solving them step by step. But that's a great analog if you think about it.
I heard a good reason for why Shopify succeeded. It was that it started in Europe where the labels didn't care that much. So
Spotify, not Shopify.
Yeah, Spotify. God damn it. There's this funny like tweet from Toby where he's mixing up. Anyway, that it started in Europe where like the labels just didn't make that much money. So they didn't care that much about like experimentation. And it got to like a certain scale in a mass scale space where then they were able to go like, oh, actually this worked. Like, why don't we do it in the US? So maybe there's an analogy here where you could like pick a vertical where like, there's not that much money. So people are willing to experiment, or it's like a tertiary thing and then get scale.
No, I think that is interesting. We're just starting to now build that second part of the business. So far our products are all APIs. We sell to AI companies or agent companies or people trying to use AIs to make their businesses better. We have recently hired people and started now partnering with some publishers and figuring out our thing. The core hypothesis we have, which is I think a little bit counterintuitive for people, is that we want to figure out a way of doing differential pricing.
Yeah, that's tricky.
I really think the only reason
like businesses might pay more than consumers, and
exactly. I think if you try to pay the exact same amount for every read of a data point, there is no way to clear the market and make things work. And so you have to figure out how to do some interesting scalable differential pricing. That's what ads do well, right? Like it's crazy that like there is such a nice market mechanic with ads to pay for different queries, and different users end up making a ad business very like some are 10% of queries are positive, the rest are negative, but it's still a high margin business.
Tell us about this fundraise, Parag. Who did you raise from? How did it go down? Is this your first company, by the way, or did you do a company before Twitter?
Dude, Twitter was my first job.
Oh, really?
Out of grad school, I got hired.
Oh, how long were you at Twitter?
11 years.
Wow.
Out of grad school, I was hired as the most junior engineer at Twitter.
Like you in IC1 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think Twitter was early enough that there weren't serious leveling plans or leveling ways. The fundraise, this was our second fundraise. Parallel is about 2 years old. We started last January. It's interesting, when we were building for the first year, like the market wasn't there. Like we were saying like, we have built APIs, and our pitch was crazy, right? We've built APIs. They're really slow. So humans don't have patience to use them, but agents will, because agents will be asynchronous. And there weren't, as you can imagine, a lot of buyers lining up to go buy that last year. This year, two things have happened. We have scaled. Now, some people were willing to buy that, and we got to work with them and really scale the product offerings. But then we were able to make things fast because our index really got to scale. So this year, I would say we hit what feels like product market fit to me. I don't know, like.
So when you say your index got to scale, like you're caching the search results and like you're caching.
No, we're crawling the web, right? So the first thing we did when we started was we put a couple of people on like going and building a crawler and crawling the web to collect and build a large index. And it takes a while. It's like a lot of engineering at scale. We wanted to build it ourselves from the ground up because we knew it would be different for AIs, and we had some hypotheses on how.
Yeah.
So
okay, sorry, I don't want to lose this fundraising story. So you feel like you hit product market fit, like, you know, did the VCs come knocking? Did you go do a fundraise? So you raised 100 million. Who was the lead?
We raised 100 million. It was co-led by Kleiner Perkins, Mamon, and Index, Shardul. So they were co-leads. Shardul was already an investor from the seed. So the way it went about was that we felt like now the market has arrived. We'd been building like quietly and in stealth and selling privately. There was not really a real website. We weren't really marketing the product. We weren't really doing very much because we didn't think the market was there. And then as soon as we figured the market was there and the product was there, we changed into let's go hire, let's go make noise, let's go launch the product, let's go talk about the product. And we shifted into a completely different year. In August is when we first launched the product publicly. And I think that created both a wave of customers, but also investor interest. And we were shifting into this more aggressive gear. So it made sense for me to go fundraise. So it was some combination of inbound VC interest and me thinking that this was the point.
Nice. Why kind of build quietly? Like, why not just launch earlier to, like, you know, garner interest, just as a strategy thing? I mean, how do you even find customers if you're building quietly?
The thing for us was our product was designed to be an API because we want to be a web player and we want to be horizontal. So we can't go solve problems that require deep, intimate understanding of a specific agent anywhere, right? So now, almost by definition, if you want to be horizontal and on the web, your product is an API. So we took that for granted because that's what got us excited about this in the first place. Now, if your product is an API, you don't get to innovate constantly on the surface of the API once you take on a large number of customers. So I got advice from Patrick Collison early that, like, if your product is an API, before you give it out and have a lot of people rely on it, better have confidence in the API shape and the surface because you'll have to maintain it for a long time, right? So when we initially started, we had a rule that we will only have small number of customers who are very, very close partners, wherein we have a Slack where we feel comfortable and they feel comfortable that if we make a breaking change to the API and call them, that in a week or two, they will go make some changes and deploy them in their code base and work with us. And it'll be a distraction. They'll be annoyed, but like that's the kind of bar to be an early partner because we were guessing what the API shape should be, right? And working with customers to figure it out. And if you take on a large number of customers, you kind of take on too much friction for yourself to be able to sort of then change your mind or iterate fast or change the API shape or the level of abstractions.
Yeah, makes sense.
Parag, this is really cool. So where are you at today in terms of like like you sound like you're getting product market fit. You got your customers are mostly these AI companies. what's the stage of the product now in deployment? Like how, any sense of scale in terms of how many queries you're handling, or how many tokens or anything like that?
I think the only public information we've shared so far is when we launched in April, we already were doing millions of queries a day. The interesting thing about our product offering is that we are shipping APIs that operate at various levels of abstraction. So one of the crazy things, and we shipped a crazy expensive API yesterday. You should try it, by the way. But our cheapest API is probably like under half a cent per API call. And until yesterday, our most expensive API was $2.50 per API call. And as of yesterday, you can make a single agentic API call and like spend $50 on it.
Wow. What does it do?
Or $100 on it. Like, sorry?
What does it do?
It generates a full database for you. So you can go say as Mercury, find me every startup that has fundraised in the last 3 months as is in the Bay Area and has a founder who was previously, is a first-time founder and raised from one of these 5 investors that I know really well. You could run this query and you'll get like 200 answers.
You give it like a natural language prompt like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
You give it a natural language query. People do these kinds of queries with deep research historically or products like that. And I think you get like 8 obvious answers that you already knew. You use us and you're going to get like 180 answers and you can build a full database from it.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah. It's just like an army of agents going and doing work for you.
Is it like is it actually fixed dollars, $50, or is it like variable, like depending on the query, it might cost $200? So.
It's variable. So you get to say like, I want to pay this much per output that satisfies my constraints.
And Parag, so this is an interesting use case you just mentioned to Mercury, right? Like, okay, building this database of like, and you said sales before is like something you're seeing a lot of growth in. Are there any kind of other major areas you're seeing like, hey, these are the applications that people are using this stuff for?
Yeah, no, I think in finance and people in the investing business, whether it be like hedge funds or PE funds, like you see a bunch. We see some action in recruiting. We see action in coding agents, obviously, because they're so pervasive. We see use cases in like, let's call them productivity software, like general. Like if you think of a piece of software you use at an enterprise internally, and has sort of some system of record, and you need to connect their agents to the web, they can use us to do that. We see, I don't know, any category of knowledge work. Like people are doing like menu extraction from the web. People are building their equivalent of Zoom info, which is proprietary to their use case from the web. People are doing claims processing for insurance, or people are building like a data set for doing some financial modeling as a consultant. It's very, very, a lot of government data is being gotten to do RFPs, I'm going to do payroll in a compliant way. I need to know for every county or every state some set of data which changes every few months. I need to keep that up to date in order to do compliant payroll. Like it's very, very broad-based.
And you're serving the people who are making the queries, not who are receiving the queries, right?
We are serving people building automations around these. So we are just an API. So I'll give you some examples, right? I think one of our customers has built their own insurance underwriting workflow, right? So they will then call our APIs. They've architected a workflow system that uses our APIs. Now, another one of our customers, and again, there's different layers of customers, like we're integrated into a bunch of low-code, no-code tools that people might use. Like if you think of N8N or Lindy or Gumloop, there's a bunch of such tools being used all over where business people will come build their, call them agentic workflows through various modalities. And when that workflow needs to research the web or pull data from the web, they will use our APIs because there's like a node built using our APIs in those solutions. So we are the very infra heavy part of it. And our product is an API, and people make this capability accessible to all kinds of users through different ways of integrating them into agents or solutions.
It's cool. And what's the plan? Like, when you think about the next few years, like, do you see yourselves as like architecting this business model, or are you going to be like working with other players? And what else do you have in store in terms of evolving the company?
Oh, so I think the agentic web has barely started, right? Like there are like still the primary business of the web is humans. These are all everything I described so far is an edge case, and like almost no one is it's not happening yet at scale. So if you think about, and we're very early in our journey, right? Like our systems, right? Like in some sense we have the most advanced systems, and in some sense they are really terrifyingly bad. And so I think it's very early. The thing I'm most excited about next is like the market today is like people want to buy tools for agents because an agent is defined as a model with a set of tools, and people give it a web search tool. I think what I'm excited about for next year is I think more and more of the market will move towards sub agents. So people will call us as a search agent to go do with more autonomy, more work than a single tool call, which is very constraining. And the next thing I'm excited about, which is another product we shipped last week, is this thing of the web transitioning from pull as it is today to push. So you should be able to say, when X happens in the world, call me so that me or my agent can take an action. So we shipped a really early alpha product about this. And that's my favorite direction. Now we will see when it becomes good enough to be useful in very real enterprise use cases.
Right. So you could tell Imad, like, anytime like someone updates their profile to like founder or something, and he's like calling them, it's like, you should set up a Mercury account.
Exactly. So I think like when something changes in the world as visible on the open web, that is actionable for me, call me. That's the whole point of that product.
That's pretty cool.
What's been like the most surprising part of starting a company, Parag? I mean, you were at a very high level position at a pretty big company just before this. So you've seen kind of, a pretty broad scale, but yeah, as an entrepreneur, what was like something you didn't expect?
I got good advice, I think. I think like almost everything that works at scale at post PMF is the wrong thing to learn a lesson from without scale before PMF. So almost everything is probably that you've learned is probably the wrong answer.
And Twitter had this like super crazy strong product market fit, right? Like it just grew like an insane amount without like trying
and
that
it was
hard.
Like, so I think Twitter almost was like crazy product market fit, a scale problem, any idea you could test empirically. Like you didn't have to be extremely opinionated about the future because empirical data, user feedback was so readily available. Like you didn't have to work to get feedback. You didn't have to be creative to get feedback, right? You just had to observe problems and solve for them. In the 0 to 1 journey, you have to be very, like the first thing that we had to do was we had to disqualify almost all use cases so that we were set up to build something that we think would matter in the future, right? So for the first year, we almost had to not be responsive to 90% of things customer asked us on hearing our pitch. And we would say, we cannot do that or we won't do that. And we had to zoom in on the places where we thought that we could build something special and ignore where the market or the demand was in the moment. And that was really counterintuitive to me. But like where I cannot articulate why we have the right to win, I don't want to go build, even as a startup.
And you also want to like build the things that will matter in like 3 years' time. Like they're the horizontal things that you were talking about that are like reusable and.
Exactly. No, we are in the classic mode of like, this market is tiny right now. We want to be early and great in this market. And we're just putting all of our eggs in this basket that agents on the web will be a big, big, big deal. And this market will be 1,000x, 1,000,000x of what it is today in a few years. And that we will have some substantial share of this market.
Yeah, makes sense. Any other surprising learnings?
No, I think I'd never fundraised before, which is kind of interesting thing to learn. I got to speak to a lot of founders and heard a lot of opinions along the way, and everyone does it differently. Everyone has a different philosophy. I'm forming my own.
Seems like you figured that bit out pretty quick.
I don't know yet. I don't know. We'll find out at the next fundraise. The thing about fundraise is you only have to fail once for it to be a real problem.
Well, in my last company, I failed to fundraise like almost every year for like 4 years. So the alternative is you eventually become profitable, and that's the other way around.
Yeah, I think I would rather figure out how to build a great product and then never be great at fundraising. If I could have my way,
Yeah, that would be great.
that would be the utopian.
I don't know about you, but not anymore. But previously, at least, like fundraising was like the worst part of running a startup. Like I like talking to customers and selling, even if I had no like building a product. Like, yeah, I guess firing people is also probably like a good contender for the worst part of running a startup. But between the two of them, even now I don't love fundraising.
Wait, for you, fundraising and firing people are at the same level?
No, I think fundraising is much worse than firing people. I would say it was like at Mercury, we've had an easier time and I probably got better at it. But yeah, at least at a similar level, even now.
Yeah, I probably agree.
Like, I don't hate it as much as you guys do.
Well, you've had such an easy time, Parag. It's the times that you fail and you go out there and you get like 30 no's, and it's like, you have like your personality attached to the startup success. So like when you get a no, it feels like someone's rejecting you, and like you put your heart into it. It's like really hard.
But okay, let me tell you my perspective. Like for me, getting a no during the fundraise just doesn't hit me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mental model of fundraise is I only need one yes. It's like an amazing game where there is some correlation, but there is some lack of correlation among all the people you speak with. And you only need one yes. On the customer side though, I feel like ultimately to win, you got to get like all of them to say yes. So like every customer rejection is like a dagger for me, But a fundraise rejection, I'm like, I need 1 out of n. On customers, I need like 80% of them, of the eventual market, to say yes to me. And so that's like way more personal.
The thing with customers, at least for Mercury, because there's like hundreds of thousands of them or even millions eventually, like, at least at the start, I was like, if 1% love it, like that's amazing. But I see your point. And it is true, you only need one. I think the thing that I always get caught in fundraising is like, you talk to someone and you're like, wow, this person really gets it, and I'd like love to work with this person, and they're like, they have a shiny brand, and there's all the stories about like, or they take you on a helicopter ride, or whatever it is, and you get like very excited about working with that person, and then you get a no, and it's just like I do feel like you get some emotional investment into like a specific firm or a specific person.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time end up spending a lot of time with some of these firms, and the diligence process can be, kind of excruciating in many cases.
And VCs are trained to like be very excitable, like they want to seem like they're like so into your idea until like the last moment when they say no.
But I think perhaps I already have, at least my mental model here is helpful. Like almost by definition, a VC wants, like it is rational for them to be excited about you and indicate to you that there is an extremely high likelihood of them investing at an extremely favorable set of terms for you, so that they have the option. Like if they don't do that, you're not going to allocate time to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100% rational from their perspective. Yeah.
And so now if you assume that, then there is no signal in there. And like as much as, and they're not being misleading. It is just like, it is rational for them to have you allocate time to them, which will happen if they are curious, if they're excitable, if they're excited, so that they get more information from you, so that they have all of the information.
Yeah, I mean, that's all rational, Parag, but like we're kind of humans, and we're like on the other side, like you as an entrepreneur, like selling your heart out, right? And you also want to, like the game you're playing as an entrepreneur is like seem that you're very excited about that firm, and that like you really believe in your idea, and like, you can't imagine why someone else wouldn't. Yeah, I agree. Both people are playing like a game and projecting something, but it's hard to like completely remove the human aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I'll bring it back to customers. I feel that way with customers. Like, I think sensing that you're very likely to have a customer work with you, and then that not working out is the one that really hits me more than other things. Like, I don't know, because
I can imagine that being hardest.
yeah, because there isn't that incentive. Like customers have almost truth-telling incentives because it's really more of a partnership when you're selling an API. And there, if you read the wrong cues, like I'm not discounting what a customer tells me, right? And there, if it doesn't work out, then is it like, oh, did I not understand their product use case? Did I screw it up? Is my product bad? Like that sends me into a more negative cycle.
Yeah, I could see that. And then, Raj, did you also have that with customers? Like, were you always kind of emotionally attached to winning each one?
No. The thing is with customers, yeah, they have a truth-telling intent, but like you can iterate, typically. And like I've had meetings with customers where like, yeah, they said no, but then they gave me some new ideas for how to improve stuff. And like and those meetings were always valuable, right? Whereas with the VCs, I didn't feel like the meetings were valuable. I felt like they were a waste of time because like, because they were called I think there was a word for it, I have to use a cuss word here, grin fucking or something. Like they're just like, so,
That is the right term, though.
yeah, they're like, oh, this is so great, this is amazing, blah blah blah, and they're like, and they just waste your time. That's the thing. And like Parag, you definitely have not gone through this because you already have a brand like attached to you, and like you're kind of already well known. So like. But like, Imad and I have to go through this many times. I mean, Imad, maybe you failed for 4 years. I probably failed for 10. It was very hard to raise for like Presto. So, yeah, it was a bane of my existence. But I mean, I got good at it as a result. So I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I've been lucky so far. I will come around to your perspective, perhaps in the next couple of fundraisers.
Hopefully, it'll be up and to the right. You'll never have to deal with it.
There's no such thing. No such
then
thing.
you'll
Parag,
retire.
what's your view on like, are we in an AI bubble? I mean, you see it at the ground level. Like, are we just? I actually have a hard time deciding sometimes whether we're like just getting started or whether we're like in a late stage bubble. It's like a weird moment.
So okay. Perhaps have the least controversial opinion here. I think it's not a bubble. When we are like 8 years from today, this moment will not feel like a bubble. Is it possible between now and 8 years from today, at some point there is like a big downswing because people did stupid things?
In the .com bubble, it took 14 years to recover.
I think here it's like more 5 to 8, in my opinion. So I do think time is moving faster. Like everything happens faster. So you don't need that long in my intuition. So I think instead of thinking of this as the bubble, you have to think of that downturn as the overreaction in my mind. But you do have to think of like, okay, there is exuberance. There is people willing to experiment. So you do see the signals of what might feel like a bubble, right? Like people have like, oh, I need to use AI. Instead of saying, I need to solve problem X, people are saying, here is a solution. Where do I use it? Right? When you see behaviors of that kind, which we're seeing all over the market right now, there are risks, like because we're generally very, very bad at saying, I have a solution, let's find a problem to apply it to in general as people. And so we are going to do bad things. So now the question is, will the good things continue to deliver enough value for us to have the luxury of making these mistakes constantly and wasting capital and misallocate capital? Or will they not? And I think that's what will decide whether we enter into some negative moment or not. But the reality is there's enough good to be done that if we all did it over time the right way, we will get way beyond where we are in terms of positive impact and value creation. And so, again, I don't know which way it will go. So I don't know if there'll be a downturn moment. I'm hoping there won't be, but it's possible. And part of the funding strategy for us is to be able to absorb that.
Is the idea that like you've raised a bunch of money and you're not going to spend it very quickly?
Not exactly. The idea is that we will spend it against business goals. So we'll spend it quickly if we see revenue scale like crazy, right? But if we don't, we won't. So I think it is a somewhat disciplined strategy aligning spend to market traction.
Yeah. I was wondering because you're also building this crawler and like I assume you have like some pretty expensive compute needs as well, which are not like tied to revenue all the time.
Exactly. And so I think we really manage and govern that, right? So that was relative to the capital we have and the customers we have. We try to do math to figure out how much to spend there. So we're taking a somewhat disciplined approach, but not a non-aggressive approach, if you may. So if we see revenue growth, we're going to go spend faster. But if we see any slowdown, we're going to be much more measured.
And so should we do the rapid fire? We have a rapid
Yeah.
fire. Yeah, let's do that.
I'm terrible at rapid fire, but let's go.
It'll be fine. Just I can start off. What's the biggest mistake you've made in your career?
Not shipping a piece of software like today and waiting for like 6 months.
Was this at Twitter or current company?
Yeah, Twitter.
Do you have the specific piece of software in mind or you don't want to reveal?
No, it's just like ranking in the timeline. So that thing has compounded ever since Twitter was flatlining. That thing has compounded ever since. And the cost of 6 months of compounding, it's just like the cost grows every year.
Sorry, what do you mean ranking in the timeline?
So Twitter timeline used to be reverse chronological. I went to a new team, worked on figuring out how to build the algorithm for it. And it took us we were almost too rigorous in shipping it. And
That's interesting. So this was actually like an inflection point at Twitter. Like it was like flatlining, like usage was flatlining and all this stuff until the algorithm was shipped.
Yep. And you could have shipped it, like it was ready to fire, I think 6 months, 9 months before we actually got it out at scale. And those are 6 months of compounding.
What made you stall? What led you to stalling?
It wasn't just me. I think there was like, it felt like a big fundamental change to the platform and people were slightly risk averse and wanted to dot their I's, cross their T's. And it was, you just did 10 more experiments and like understood every angle of this instead of just like shipping.
Yeah, that tends to happen unless you have like a very, I guess, decisive CEO or something that can just go like, it's ready to go kind of thing.
And is this is the For You page basically, right? As it's become?
Yeah. This is the.
And you think that if you did that 6 months earlier, like the growth of Twitter would have just, like even those 6 months would have made a big difference?
I think because if it's since then, at least until I left, Twitter grew by 15% year on year in terms of usage, right? And so Twitter would be 15% larger on any given day if you shipped it a year earlier, right? And so that number is now growing each year. And so now you like every year the regret increases. And that's, I think, an interesting life lesson to working in areas where there could be compounding, where you'd rather ship early than late.
It's only really bad if a competitor ships it before you and then they compound away from you or something. Otherwise, it doesn't matter too much if it's like 1 year delay.
Yes, that's even worse though, right? That's even worse in my opinion. Like this is the baseline. Like even this is such a big regret that if a competitor further destroys you as a result of you being slow, then you're like totally.
Which founder inspires you the most these days?
I don't know. I've been a little bit. I no longer have individuals as big idols these days. But when I took the job at Twitter, I was really inspired by Satya, and I used to call him the founder or a refounder or whatever you want to call that. I do think that it's like like when I was taking on this Twitter CEO job, right? It was this moment where I had to figure out what this company was going to become with me and how it was going to be different. And the inspiration I got on someone like completely changing a company, a business, a culture, a product came from Satya. And I thought of wanting to be a founder in that mold of a founder in that moment.
Yeah. I feel like Satya has done a lot of crazy things and with a lot of confidence, which has like been really admirable. Did you have some crazy ideas? Like obviously you had a relatively short tenure, but given time, were you going to go fund a open source AI nonprofit or something like that?
No, we did fund a thing called Blue Sky before. That was before I became CEO even. But I think there were crazy things to be done. I think like Birdwatch, as we used to call it, or community notes for moderation, was something I was building and super excited about. We had this thing called Project Saturn, which was crazy. on how to change the content moderation regimen. We had this notion of how we would change the recommendation system. So yeah, I think we were going to shape Twitter to be very radically different than what it had been. I didn't get the full opportunity to go do that, but I think that's what I took inspiration from. So I think what I'll say is like being a founder is like a state of mind more than.
I would agree. I mean, I think people, early employees like you were at Twitter and like Satya at Microsoft, like they have that is built, it kind of gets built into their personality, right? Like this is who they are, they're, and I think they can act like founders as well. It's unlike a hired gun where someone coming out from the outside who doesn't have that. Okay. What has been the most rewarding part of your founding journey to date?
Stuff working for a customer. Like every time that happens and you see someone do something surprising, happens like once every few weeks, I want to say, where like you see one thing and you're like, wow, I didn't think someone would do this. And it's like really, really weird and really, really cool. And it tells you a little bit about what the future looks like. Like at this company, we're kind of living in the future because our customers are doing strange, futuristic, creative things.
Yeah, that is cool. You can see a trend before it happens.
Yeah.
I've had that a few times, yeah.
All right, maybe the final one. Which current trend or fashion do you think is a passing fad?
Current trend or fashion? I think video fundraise announcements.
You think so?
Well-produced video fundraise announcements. I think that's gotta go.
There was like there was an alpha to them when the first person that did it, but yeah, now everyone's doing it.
Yeah, that has to go.
It's interesting how fundraising announcements is changing over time, right? Before it was all like TechCrunch was like the rite of passage. Now everyone's doing direct stuff.
What's your answer to the fad question? That's a good one.
Yeah, about you.
Okay, this one's probably controversial, but I think this like 996 thing, I think is a fad. You were going to say 996 too? I was just talking about it yesterday. I just think like, I don't know, I'm a pretty good engineer and I cannot work 996 as an engineer. Like you just can't code that much. Like maybe like obviously sprints are different. Like, yeah, you kind of grind for a bit. But I used to be 21 and I used to do 996, but you know what I do? I'd sit there, like have my lunch, read Hacker News, go on Twitter. Like I wasn't really working 996. I was just in front of my desk 996 because I didn't have a life. So I think like at some point people realize that like actually productive time is what matters more than like how long you sit in front of your desk.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to say the exact same thing. So much. It's gonna pass at some point, but we see these things come back in waves, right? So it'll pass and then it'll come back in some degree, then so it'll happen. I think this idea of Y Combinator in some company or some folks are like focused on in office, like that's become the main focus. Especially big corporates are focused on in office. I think Imad and I both run remote companies, and I see a lot of benefits to that. And so the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth. But running remote companies can be very, very efficient. So I think there's going to be a lot of that.
Are you remote or in person, Parag?
We started with religiously in person until a few months ago when we started scaling a lot. And now we've made a few rare exceptions. But engine product, there's like very few exceptions. Like we were very in person in Palo Alto 5 days a week. We were annoying enough.
Pre-product market fit, like being in person, I think is like probably the important. But eventually, I think the benefit, like once there's like we have 1,100 people, like you can't even fit that many people like on the same floor. Like it's not like you're really in person anyway.
Yeah, no, I do think that's why now we're becoming slightly more flexible. But I think the bias is still a little bit in person. We were so crazy, like so opinionated that like we would not often dial into meetings. So if you weren't in the office, you'd miss it. We didn't use a project manager or task manager. We would write it on the whiteboard. And we were like a little bit like early on in the first year, we tried to build extreme incentives to be in the office. I think now we are getting to be more rational and slightly less opinionated, but there's still exceptions to not being here in person.
I think the thing with remote work is like I think it is harder. It's harder to build culture. It's harder. Like you have to be very deliberate about it. I think the in-person stuff, like there's a very long history of humans working together in person. So it just, by default, unless you want to try really hard, like you shouldn't really go remote. But I do think you can make remote work, but it has to be a deliberate kind of.
And hybrid is the hardest of all, right? Like hybrid is super hard.
Yeah. No, but I think it's also your personal style. So I am finding right now that I'm so used to in person that if there is someone remote, I like fail to communicate appropriately with them. So I'm going to have to build new habits as we become more remote friendly to be successful and be very intentional about it. I think like if you just go with the flow of what you're used to and start becoming remote, you're going to get totally destroyed. So I think it's a real thoughtful transition that you have to pull off. And we don't currently have too much headspace to make such a transition.
Yeah. All right, we should wrap. This was a really fun conversation, Parag. Thanks for taking the time. Congrats on the success so far. Good speaking.
Great meeting you, Parag.
So great meeting you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please leave us a review on whatever channel you're listening on. Makes a big difference to the algorithm and to the success of the show. And see you all next week.